Hey everybody! Today we have our DM, our Dungeons & Dragons DM with us, and we're going to be grilling him with questions on how to be a better DM. It's Scott Atkins. Let's join right in. Welcome back to Thought Raid, a show where we take on thoughts and find better ways of thinking about them. I'm Brandon, this is Tim, and today we have a special guest, Scott Atkins.
Hello.
Who is our DM in our campaign for Dungeons & Dragons. We had a blast last time talking about the fight that I had with Tim, where Tim just absolutely...
Was it really a fight, though?
It wasn't. It wasn't.
Was it really a fight, Brandon?
I feel like it was. I certainly did my best to just stand there and scream, but not able to make a sound.
Brandon, you make a very good mute. We'll say that.
Wow.
I will say, it is one of the easiest fights I ever had to run, because all I had to do was look up wild magic table stuff for him. That's it. That's it. They handled the rest.
It was glorious, but not for me.
I enjoyed it. I won.
So
That's what D&D's all about. It's about me winning.
Call an ambulance.
Well.
But also for me. So anyways, this year, Scott, he's been with us before once. I think it was either the end of last year or the beginning of this year, but it wasn't too far ago. No. And now he's with us again, and he's with us because this year he started a Dungeons & Dragons campaign for us, which has been absolutely fantastic. And let me just start with some gushing, okay, if I may.
Gosh, please.
Oh, okay.
Brandon's simping for the DM.
They're trying to gain extra inspiration.
Please, no. But anyways, no, like, see, I run my own little like text RPG type thing.
Right.
But it's text based, and I do that on my Discord channel for UGN. And there's a lot of different things I've led, and there are things where it's like I'll do something, I'm like, did I really enjoy this, or is this something I'm just kind of doing and working through?
Oh, I know the feeling.
Yes, and so I'll do it, and I'm like, I think I had fun. I think there is no question I am having landslides of fun in your campaign, laughing my head off. I am refreshed.
I'm pretty sure it's LMAO.
Look, I'm working through my present convictions, okay? Anyways, but yes, it's been a lot of fun. So we wanted to have you on, Scott, so we could talk specifically about just different things about being a dungeon master and doing storytelling in general.
I am as open a book as I can be without spoiling things.
Of course, thank you, because I don't want to know, because we're still in that campaign.
Well, I think I have a question that has been lingering in my mind for a while, because when I first came to the DM or the D&D thing, it was my first experience, right? And I was looking around, and it was Brandon, it was me, it was you, Scott, Dan, Haley, Jared. Is that it? Was there somebody else?
In our first session, yeah, that was it.
And everybody has done D&D before, and I was thinking to myself, like, what was it like when they first got into it? What was the first experience like? Did you guys have a voice? Because I haven't developed a voice for my character. We were just talking about that because it's kind of scary.
Yeah.
You know? But when you first started D&D, what was that like? Your character creation? Were you worried about what people would think?
So the first ever experience with Dungeons & Dragons that I had was in middle school. I do not remember the year. It's a long time ago now. But it was back in 3.5, the 3.5 edition of D&D. I played a half-elf paladin.
I was about to say, you said you never played a halfling, but you said
No, half-elf. I've never played a halfling. I want to at some point, but I played a half-elf paladin who I actually have brought back in this campaign as one of the ancient heroes, Geldir, the paladin. He was my first ever Dungeons & Dragons character, and then, but I was in theater at the time. I had just started doing theater, and I was always kind of a weird kid, so yeah, I did a voice for him.
And you were how old again?
I was in middle school. It was 7th grade. Yeah. Some of my friends said, hey, we're getting a D&D club together. it was kind of towards the end of the year, and I was like, sure, I'll play. I've never played before. It was a lot of paperwork, which is what 3.5 is. For those of you who have ever played 3.5 or Pathfinder, it's a lot. But yeah, after that, I kind of didn't play at all. I moved schools and kind of dropped out from that group, and the school I went to, there was no interest in that kind of thing, so my nerdy side kind of got suppressed a little bit.
So what did people think about it at that school? Was it like nerd?
It was a private school, so it was more preppy kids that were not really into sort of nerd culture. So that was kind of my private life, and then I still nerded out a little bit doing theater and everything. But
it's unfortunate that had to be your private life, because even when I was going through high school and stuff, like sports, and I just never, I could care less.
Yeah.
And it was just like, and now I think like Gen Zers, they're starting to have more of a gaming influenced culture than we did as millennials.
Yeah, it's so weird because working at GameStop for 12 years.
Oh yeah, you would have good insight into that.
Yeah, like when I first started working at GameStop, you would have the people that would play RPGs, and they would come in, it's like, ooh, I know you. We know each other. This makes sense. And over the years, as things progressed, you would have people that come in for the Nintendo Wii looking for Hello Kitty Island Adventures and things for their kids, but then you would have all sorts of people across the spectrum, jocks and cheerleaders and moms and dads and all sorts of people that you wouldn't expect playing video games. Let me get Call of Duty, Yeah. Or let me get God of War, and it's like, now it's the prime method of entertainment for most people. There's esports now, which is huge.
Oh yeah, that was a thing that's happened in my young adulthood year. It's still a young adult, but still like within like earlier part of my 20s, things started happening with esports. That's an interesting phenomenon.
And now it's not just sporting games. It's like competitive like shooting games. It's like first person shooters and League of Legends and Dota. All that kind of stuff is competitive now.
Big enough that what big sports TV program has picked up esports as part of their regular programs, I think. I'm pretty sure ESPN has picked up that.
At least one of the ESPN channels.
Yeah.
And they've got League of Legends, they've got Dota, they've got Call of Duty tournaments, and you win big money playing
like
this.
Call of Duty, that's like the quintessential game, but like League of Legends, Dota, World of Warcraft, stuff like that, that's like core fantasy stuff. And it's stuff that you would not see on the like a primary stage like that, which I'm all about that. So yeah, I like seeing more fantasy media coming up into popularity.
What is it like for you? Because you came through middle school, you're like, I associate with this, then you got into high school, and you switched schools, and it wasn't as popular. And now you walk around, you just go to the mall or you go out in public and you see people with a Roll D20 shirt.
I know, I love it.
And people know what this pop culture means, and it's actually part of their lives. What is that like for you as a DM, being able to like, I guess, walk in your skin?
For me, it's always a question. Like I see people wearing like D&D shirt or anything like that, or like a Critical Role shirt, and I'm like, what ideas have you had? That's kind of it's always this curiosity of like, I know what ideas I've had. What have you thought about this certain thing, this class, these new rules, this new feature, whatever? It's always a curiosity and just sort of a drive for me. It's just it's like I want to get all of your input kind of thing. Yeah.
So I had this question pop into my head. I know with Dungeons and Dragons, you can follow the pre-existing world and add into it whatever you want for the most part. But they have, of course, a huge repertoire of different monsters to fight or things of that nature.
Yep.
And I noticed that, like, in our campaign, that I recognize this and this and this. You've used a lot of stuff from the Dungeons and Dragons stuff. Like, we have dealt with things from the Shadowfell.
Yep.
We've dealt with things from the Fae. We, encounter, orcs and elves and all that kind of stuff all day long. I specifically have done, and you're asking, like, what do the other DMs do? I've specifically crafted kind of like loosely connected worlds. Like, for instance, like we have in my text-based thing, I have elves, but they're called Dayween. and we've taken elves and made them into their own thing. What made you decide to kind of stick closer to like the D&D's pre-established stuff?
So for me, a big part of that is my personal interest in sort of every aspect of Dungeons and Dragons, where there's the world and the lore and the sort of pantheon and the cosmological world structure, the Great Wheel or the World Tree Cosmos, that kind of thing. I like all of that sort of established stuff, because it gives me things that I can pull from when I don't have an idea myself. So it gives me things that I can build off of. And then that also, if I don't have to create a pantheon or a whole racial dynamic between 50 different races myself, it gives me the freedom to focus on the story that my players are going through and also the characters that they are meeting along the way, which for me, character creation is one of my favorite things personally. I really enjoy stepping into a character. I really enjoy presenting characters, which you guys have seen multiple times at the table now, and then the storytelling aspect. So I don't mind pulling from existing lore, because it frees me up to focus on the other stuff that I really enjoy doing.
That's interesting, because I have more of a tendency to like try to create my own thing in everything I do. Like I make the world, I make the races, I how do things operate and stuff. I love doing that stuff, but then I'm putting a lot of energy into making all these things.
The world building.
Some are very fresh and unique, and some of them are not that much different anyway.
Yes.
You know what's weird is like you guys have that difference in the creative aspect, but I'm totally different. Like I can create stuff like that and it's fun for a little while, but it stresses me out. I like operating within a predefined structure.
There you go.
Pushing the limits, seeing what I can do with what I've been given.
Yeah.
And it's like I feel like we're on a grading scale, because you like to create those things. You like to take what's already been given and create. I like operating within that and seeing how crazy I can get with it.
Yeah. It's kind of just goes down almost like, is this the lawful side? Is this the chaotic side? I'm the neutral side. This the lawful side?
I'm totally chaotic.
Well, yeah. Your
If anybody's lawful at this table, it's this guy.
That's true.
I
definitely do fit into the neutral spectrum, though.
I mean, look how messy the haircuts get as you.
I actually thought about getting my hair cut before I came on to do this, but I decided, you know what? No, I'm just gonna.
Your wife's gonna be like, look at that slob.
Oh my
I
god!
left you alone for 2 months.
Wow!
She actually wants me to grow my hair out more, and I'm like, I don't want to.
She's gonna watch this and be like, look what you could have.
Look what you can.
No.
Wow!
I'm not. I will never get to your lengths. I will never. It's glorious, but I will never do that.
Fair.
It's also work. That's the biggest. I look at them like, it's already hard enough with my hair. I have to keep like the you know how long my hair's gone. It's never been long, but just when I have to like tuck it behind my ears, I'm like too long.
So speaking of hair and hairstyles and stuff, you said that you love creating characters.
Mm-hmm.
When you create a character, how much of what you'd like to have happen in your real life goes into that character?
Okay, that's a tough one. So, for me, it kind of part of it depends on how I got inspired to make the character. Which there are just going on like Reddit and everything, and seeing other DMs talking about like their character creation process, or other players talking about it. There's a lot of them that go like, this is my process. That my inspiration will come from this, and this is where I start, and then I go through it step by step by step. So like it's like I pick the personality first, and then the class and the race and the voice and whatever. Mine is from all over. Like there will be a time where I will do a silly voice, and I'm like, hey, I can build that into something, or I will remember something I read as a child and be like, that could make a cool character. And so the parts of myself that I put into those characters, it really just varies. It also varies by like, is this character going to be a villain? Is this character going to be an ally? Is this a neutral character? Is this a world-shaping, super important, definitely needs to be like the center of attention character, or is this a background character that what they do really doesn't affect anything in the world? So yeah, I'd say I really can't put a definite number on, like, I put this much of myself into each character. It very much varies because and it has to for all the different characters, especially when it comes into playing villains, people of questionable morals. There's only so much of myself I can put into that because, you know, that's not who I am. But yeah,
I'm definitely more of a shoot first, ask questions later kind of character maker.
I mean, maybe.
For me, like, I'm still trying to figure out, like, my character, like, how many aspects of me character is embodying, and why did I do it this way?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. But, like, I also, like, it could be a whole bunch of different things that caused me to get to that place. But it's just interesting, made me think about that. Sorry. I'm on a tangent, and I didn't mean to get on this tangent. I'm just, like, excited is all.
Well, you know, when I made, so my character's name in this roleplay that we're doing, his name is Ashton Freebloom. He's a halfling wild mage, gambling sorcerer.
Oh, so fun.
And, you know, when
Gave me so much to play with.
Ooh, I could have gone there.
Oh my gosh, no!
Okay, anyway, moving on. When I was creating the character, you know, I was thinking, like, what would be fun for me? You know, instead of what would be applicable role-playing wise. And I was like, well, you know, I like the idea of chance. And, like, in Final Fantasy XI, another game I played, my main class is Corsair, which was all about gambling and chance, and it's a buffer class. And I like glass cannons. I always play utility glass cannons.
Well, you picked the right one to be a sorcerer.
Always do it. But when I was making the Hero Forge, which if you guys have never been there, heroforge.com for all of your roleplay needs. We're not sponsored.
No. I wish Hero Forge.
Maybe one day.
But I was creating my character's model, and I was like, how do I want Ashton to look? And I was like, I don't want to make an unattractive character. You know, I don't want to be associated with an unattractive character. And I'm like, ooh, maybe that's prideful. Maybe there's something in me, you know, about that. But when I was making them, I was like, okay, I kind of want messy black hair. I like, you know, elegant clothing that's also kind of like disheveled.
Yeah.
You know, and I like the idea of him being relaxed and smoking a pipe. I'm like, how much of myself is going into this character? But then I come to the table, and you've got this swath of different characters, especially freaking Scrawl.
Oh.
And just like, I think one thing that I appreciate, here's me fishing for inspiration points.
Go for it.
One of the things I appreciate most is how well you commit. And when I say commit, like the voice, the way you make decisions, the things that you choose as a dungeon master to roll for. And when I say roll for, if you've never played D&D, when you make a decision, sometimes you can just make the decision and it happens. Sometimes you have to roll based on your ability scores. Like if you're going to jump, well, what's your athleticism score? Roll the dice to see if you succeed.
Yeah.
And it's like you're very fair about it, I feel.
I try. I try to be fair in that aspect of like, because I don't know all of y'all's ability scores just off the top of my head, and I don't have all of those sheets behind my screen. I have a little bit of information behind the screen about each of your characters, but I really kind of just go by, you know, we have a halfling sorcerer in the party. We also have a tabaxi monk in the party, which is a cat person. So, you know, if Tim said, my character wants to climb this 50-foot wall, that's going to be really difficult for you. Mm-hmm. If our tabaxi monk, which is Jared, is the one who's playing him, if he says, I want to climb this 50-foot wall, well, he has claws and is a cat. That's a lot easier for him. So I go based on what you guys have told me, what you guys have played out at the table, personality traits that have come out. It's a lot to kind of factor in right on the spot, but I really try to go by y'all's personalities, and just depending on what it is you guys want to do, there's a time when I'm like, yeah, roll for every single bit of this, and then there's a time when I'm like, no, you can just do that. Mm-hmm. And it really varies from thing to thing. Like, for you, conning somebody, you might not always need a roll for that, but that's because you've put points into that. Deceiving somebody, you might not always need to roll for that. Our barbarian, who is a minotaur.
You're naturally good at deceiving people. You don't have to roll for it.
Which is ironic, because in real life, not really.
True. But our barbarian, to kick down a door, he might not need to roll for that, because he's, you know, a big buff minotaur dude. So it's there's a lot of factors that go into it, and then I do try to be fair with my DCs, which for those of you who don't know, DC, you might hear me say that a bunch of times.
What does DC stand for?
DC stands for difficulty class.
Okay.
And it's kind of a sliding scale, and it's just at the DM's discretion, how hard is this thing to do? So like something with a DC 10, pretty easy. Something with a DC 5, almost impossible not to do it. But then it goes unless you're Brandon last session, yeah. But then it goes up from there to 20, 25. 20 is hard, 25 is very hard, and 30 is near impossible. Because it's all based on a D20 system with different modifiers. So if I say DC, it's difficulty class, and that's what I'm talking about, is how hard or easy it is to do something. But yeah, I try to be fair about that, and I try to set DCs off of a... I don't always use a 5-point scale. It's kind of my skeletal. 5 being, yeah, sure, easy stuff. 10, 15, 20, 25, all the way up like that. But I will, for certain things, especially when it comes to like role playing, like if you are deceiving somebody and you talk your way through it, you actually say what Ashton would say to Con Scaralis, which you've done a couple times now. I will steadily, like, I'll have a DC in mind when you say I want to do this, and I'll be like, okay, that's DC 15, cool. And then as you talk it over and like, hype yourself up or talk yourself up or talk that con that, shave a point off, 14, 13, 12, becomes easier and easier. Or if you're just completely flubbing it, harder and harder and harder. So it's kind of a spot decision. I do have a chart on the back of my DM screen that has some sort of baseline DCs for certain actions, but it's very much a guideline. Most of it right up here.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gosh. My question, the most important one that I've been wanting to, save for today was just one of the biggest challenges that I'm facing with my character right now is the fact that I'm about ready to have to make decisions I would not make personally as a character. I mean, in general, the amount of lying my character has done anyways is more than I would do. But I'm going to probably have to do that again.
Yeah.
And trying to commit to that is very hard. And I think there's a lot of people that honestly would look at games like this and they look at the evil that could be done with it and they're like, well, I just can't do anything with... Dungeons and Dragons.
You mean your character's lying, Brent? You're supposed to be a Christian.
I know, your character's casting spells and doing incantations.
Yeah.
And scrying, whatever else. Like, how do you commit to really doing things that you wouldn't do? And how do you process all that in your head, doing things in-game that you would otherwise maybe not do in real life? Like, how do you navigate that and stuff?
So a big part of it for me is leave everything on the table. It's when because in our sessions of D&D, these guys all get to play one character with their own personality aspects and everything. I have to play however many characters they are interacting with that session, which could be 2 or it could be 100. Which, God forbid, y'all don't go meet talk to 100 people in one session. We would be there all night.
Roll a wild magic table. DM plays 100 characters.
Yeah, that'll be it. Okay, we're ending there for tonight. No. So I come to the table with personalities in mind for all of these different characters that you guys will meet, and some of them are morally questionable, and some of them are, there is no question, they have no morals. Melvin.
We hate Melvin.
Such a disgusting character. I'm mad at myself for creating Melvin. As I was playing him, when I first introduced him, I knew kind of how he was gonna go, but when I actually got into that moment and I actually started playing him out, I was like, oh, this guy is disgusting. They are gonna hate him. Mm-hmm. It had the desired effect.
Man, I was really hoping that when he was pointing the crossbow at Susie's face that it was just gonna, and she was gonna be offed. I was hoping.
No.
Sorry, Haley.
Yeah. Oh no, I had. I was kind of rolling for his sort of mental status behind screen. For those of you who don't realize what we're talking about, Melvin is one of the new antagonists I just introduced last session, who is a fairy hunter, and we happen to have a fairy in our party, and they happened to...
I'm not a fairy.
He's not a fairy. He's different.
Jeez.
He's different, but would gain an equal amount of hate from Melvin, honest to God. But it just so happened that Melvin and the fairy member of our party met up in a fighting tournament and were squared off against each other, and he figured out that she was indeed Fae, and he proceeded to try to beat her to death with his bare hands. So I was kind of rolling for his mental disability, and had I gotten to a certain point behind the screen of him just sort of in this hateful racism fueled rage of his, it would have been screw the rules of the tournament. I'm going to pin this fairy against the wall and keep punching until nothing moves anymore. Yes. And so when it comes to playing a character like that, like, he is a very hateful character. He is an extremely prejudiced person. He is, in all honesty, really very stupid, and very single-minded in his task.
Would you say that he's susceptible to social justices that are being propagated in the media?
Maybe? I hadn't actually thought about any of that. Like, any of the current events or current...
I'm seeing a similarity here.
I actually honestly didn't think about any of it when I was making Melvin. The only thing that was going through my head when I created Melvin Patroclus was, I want to build someone who this specific party is going to absolutely loathe. Because I already had Skrull, who, through the events of the first session where they sat down and had dinner with the enemy, that was so fun. It immediately took Skrull from a character... It changed his character pathway, and it opened it up into something infinitely more complex and so much more special to me. But I really wanted to come up with the most disgusting side villain character that would just, when you guys see this guy, it just, even if you're in the middle of town and you know you cannot go and just beat the crap out of this guy, you want to. I wanted that sort of...
Subtle spell, hold person.
Yeah, basically. But I wanted to make a character that would elicit that sort of visceral reaction from you guys at the table. And it was wildly successful. But yes, so putting... when I introduce a character like that to the table, who is highly prejudiced, very much worthy of hate, I really try to put very little of myself in that one. And that one, I honestly kind of look at it like, what is the opposite of me? Like, if I take my personality, which I'm usually a very level-headed person, I try to treat everybody respectfully, and I take kind of what I do, and I'm like, okay, if I'm likable enough as a person, why don't I invert that and ramp it up to 11 and make the most hated person that I can think of? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how I came about his character. Now, for somebody like Skrull, there's a lot of me in Skrull, which is fitting because he is one of my favorite NPCs.
I'm going to beat the snot out of him. 1-2 with a little halfling paws.
You can certainly try.
I'm going to just throw it down and be like, Skrull, no magic. Let's do this like short men.
To be honest, actually, that would be a fantastic fight because he is a halfling, which is about, what are you, about 3.5 feet?
3
something
foot 9
like that.
inches.
So he still actually towers above you because Skrull, this character we keep talking about, Skrull Fireclaw, is a kobold. I won't say what class because it would spoil it for these two. But he is a kobold who does use a sword and does use some magic. But he is abnormally large for a kobold, standing at about 4'9", when usually they're no taller than about 3 feet. So seeing two,
He's been juiced.
he's just abnormal. He's 1 in a billion. But yeah, seeing you and him throw down would be pretty fantastic. Also, probably pretty bad for you.
That's OOC, Scott.
What? Just he does have claws.
True.
He's a kobold. He has claws. It's not a natural weapon for them, but I might rule it differently.
I've got hairy feet. I don't know.
Watch out.
Fair.
The way I navigate my villains specifically is it's the worst of me.
Yeah.
Like it is not the inverse of me. It is what I'm very much so capable of, but with superpowers.
Yeah. And I do put some of that in my villains as well. I am a very curious person. I like to research things. I like to seek out knowledge, and that's actually something that I put into Scrawl, but to, I guess, an almost toxic level, where it's he has a hunger for knowledge, and he wants to see things, and he wants to experience things and gain that knowledge, but he may go to questionable lengths to do so. So there are definitely aspects where it's like I see sort of my own negative or potentially toxic traits if I was to like over pursue them, and I will put that into evil characters as well. So I understand that aspect. It's honestly a very easy one to touch on because sort of. If you know your toxic aspects, it's an easy one to touch on.
Yeah.
Not saying it's not a difficult subject to touch on, but getting deep like that can be difficult, but easy to notice certain traits and then to portray them.
I feel like if you're not self-aware about it, you probably would run the risk of making a hero character that makes a whole bunch of very terrible decisions without realizing and thinking that you're doing good things.
And actually, so there is my first 5th edition character is actually in the game that we play. Is Halbjorn Ironhammer.
Yes.
Which was originally the first time you and I played D&D together was under a campaign from Matt Russell.
Mm-hmm.
And the character I brought in was Halbjorn Ironhammer, a mountain dwarf battlemaster fighter. And I had to leave that campaign for personal reasons, but we made it a very epic death of Halbjorn. Death.
Yeah. Because he's alive!
In a different world, in a different setting, and significantly older. But yes, I brought that character, because that character was close to me, I wanted him in this new story, but I didn't want him to be in a position where he could, like, save you guys everyone. Because he's now being significantly older, he is a former adventurer, which you guys are current adventurers, and he is the master of an adventurer's guild. He is wildly powerful now, but he's not going to come on the missions with you guys. You guys will probably actually never see combat where Halbjorn will be helping you out, because he is only there to be that sort of elder character where he is a guide for you guys, or a master, or a resource to be you, because he's a smith. He can create things for the team, for the party. But I know that if I ever brought him into an important combat setting, that it would be very difficult for me to not elevate him to that hero status, because he is my own personal character that I have played through and had some of that character development with. So it kind of, I'm avoiding that with him. So
using a little bit of restraint there.
Yeah.
I think part of the funny frustrations that I had when I came in and there was Halbjorn is that I, the player, knew his past life.
Yes.
I was like, oh, it's Halbjorn. But my character has no idea who he is.
No, not at all.
So even though I got to share this wonderful moment, well, terrible moment technically, but still also a sweet moment in lieu of everything, my character knew nothing of the situation. I was like, dang it.
and that I have to separate out that as well. There's a thing called metagaming, which is using outside knowledge to influence how you play a character or the choices that a character would make. You really have to separate that, and especially as a DM. A lot of people think that DMs can't metagame. Oh yes, we can.
Talk to me about that.
Well, because I know all the secrets about your character.
Mm-hmm.
As a DM, the enemies you face, the people who might be hunting you down or trying to get into your head or trying to, come against you and would use information like that against you, they don't know. So those characters don't know. And there's a balance that I have to reach where it's like, I know this. Does this character know this? No? Okay. Then I have to pretend I don't know this when I am using this character. So there's a lot of metagaming like that where, and like if one of you was sneaking in battle, like one of you went and hid in battle, I can't automatically have, I know where you moved, so I'll have this enemy move to where you are and expose your hiding place and attack you. No, you're pretty well hidden, so these guys don't know where you are.
I think that's where the rolling for things really comes into play, because we in our first encounter, we had a wagon that was in the middle of the playfield, and you kept saying, well, you could do this action, but you didn't see what happened on the other side of this.
Yep.
And there were other things that happened where somebody was sneaking around or doing something, and our question to you was, did our character see that? And you were like, well, roll for perception.
Yep.
Or roll for whatever. It's like, okay, was your character aware enough to have done this? It has to make sense. And I feel like, the dice can really limit or help you engage in restraint in that.
Very much so. And I rely on that very heavily. And then I also, when I'm making a roll behind the screen, it is as rolled. That is one thing that I personally am adamant about as a DM. I know there's a lot of jokes going around on the internet about DMs fudging rolls to save their party from a TPK and everything. And while sure, I would love to not kill off one of your characters or all of your characters if you guys get into a bad situation, if that's what the dice show happen, I'm gonna let it stand.
Okay, so in our second or third...
Second.
I'm
guessing. I think I know where you're going with that.
Yeah, you had a really unique encounter where we were... What would you call it?
It was an escape encounter.
An escape encounter.
Against the Skull Lord. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically what happens is our entire party had limited movement, and we had to decide as a team what we were going to do. And there were all these bad guys that were chasing us, and basically if they caught us, it was game over.
Oh, they would have destroyed you guys.
Yeah, so we luckily made it through, once again, through crazy amounts of luck. Crazy amounts of luck. Halfling life.
So much luck.
But how much of you as a person, as a player, wanted us to fail? How much of you wanted us to fall on our face or somebody to get eliminated or for the Skull Lord to catch up? And how much of you wanted us to actually succeed and win and flee?
I would say definitely more on the succeeding side, because I want you guys to. Well, one, I love the characters that you guys have come up with. All of the characters that have come to the table so far, from these guys and my other players, have been a absolute joy to play with. But it was mostly I wanted to see you guys succeed, but I didn't want to make it easy on you, because I wanted to push everybody to be creative. And kind of come up with, if somebody did fall, if somebody did trip, if somebody did go down, hit 0 hit points and need to be carried or whatever, if you guys got caught up by the monsters and then the big bad right there behind them, I wanted to see what sort of creative ideas you guys could have come up with. And so that's why they're at that final turn, essentially they had 5 turns to escape this Skull Lord, which is an undead, very high level, very malicious caster that was chasing them with a couple other monsters, swarming them, trying to trip them up and trying to stop them. And then he was flanked by 2 additional very scary, very deadly monsters that were moving at the same rate as him. And they had to stay a certain distance away from him or else he would catch up to them. in that last turn, I think you guys had 5 turns to get away from him. And if you could survive 5 turns, you would successfully escape. That last turn, I looked at the spells that he had left, and in that moment, I personally could not decide what to do, because there were maybe 2 of the spells that if I used them, in all likelihood, one of you was going to go down. Like, not everybody can make the save. Sometimes everybody does make the save. Sometimes nobody does. And there were 2 certain spells. I think it was Cloud Kill and Cone of Cold, which if I had cast either of if the Skull had cast either of those, somebody was hitting 0 hit points, and you guys would have been stuck for another turn. You guys would have had to survive another whole turn, which I don't think you would have.
Boy.
Yeah. So in that moment, I personally could not make the decision of, I'm definitely going to pull the trigger on this spell and kill 3 of the players. So I numbered the spells behind the screen, and I rolled for it myself. Came up with a 1. I rolled low, and instead of casting one of his larger spells that could have downed somebody, he casted Magic Missile, which is a guaranteed hit, but very low damage, and spread it out amongst everybody. And I kind of justified that in my head, where he's trying to pick off, see who's the lowest, and so he's big spread, hits everybody, and if somebody goes down, awesome. Nobody went down, and I was like, okay, they're gonna make it out.
Well, also before that, we really used our abilities, because freaking Skralis was healing people, and then something happened.
Our cleric, Skralis.
Our cleric, and then something happened, and I think he cast Cloud Kill, and then I rolled a save, and then I used my halfling luck for somebody else or something, and then we just like saved each other, and then I don't know, it was actually I don't know, my heart was pounding. So
actually. And the way I had ruled that was the whole group, they could only move as a group, and the farthest they could move was double the speed of the slowest character, which is this guy, because he's a halfling. He has short little stubby legs, so he only gets 25 feet of movement. But if you had maintained that, if your character had been running, they would have caught you in round 4. I kind of did the math on it, and I looked at it, because they would have slowly closed that gap by about 10 feet every round. And by round 4, it would have been they are on your butts, in your face, and you guys are having to fight them off while still running. But you negated that by hopping up on the largest character in the group, who would not mind the weight at all, which the weight of a halfling is nothing.
Dan just looks back. Hi.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the slowest movement speed was 30. So you guys were actually even with the Skull Lord moving at 60 feet each round. And you guys were able to escape by that. And that's kind of that creative solution I wanted to inspire in you guys. I put you guys in a lethal situation. You guys would have died had you stayed in that situation. But you guys came up with some creative stuff and got out of it, which is amazing. And that's what I want to see. I made this world. You guys get to play in it. So I want to see what kind of creative stuff you come up with. And that's inspiring to me as well. And it inspires me to be more creative and throw more weird situations and weird characters at you guys, because I want to see what you'll do.
You know, I'm glad to hear that you left it up to the possibility of failure on that second mission, and that, you know, there was a chance that he could have just ruined at least 3 of us and didn't, because, you know, as a DM, I have had that moral dilemma of, like, what should I do with my players? Like,
I would just kill everybody. Like, let's go. They can make new characters.
2 sessions in, solo party kill, new campaign, who dis?
Well, but here's the thing, though. Like, you know, you gotta start that early on, because if you don't, then you run into the dilemma that I'm currently in as a DM, where we have 4 years of developed characterhood of this text-based thing that I've been doing, and it's great and beautiful, and it's inspired a lot of people in our community to write like they've never written before, which has been, it's beautiful. But the problem is, because of the situation of like, I haven't really thrown all that I truly could to get them killed, then some players are like, I don't want my character to die at all. And like, then you have to like navigate that where they're almost holding the team by an iron fist of my character dies, I'm out. Like, you know, that kind of thing. And then it makes things difficult. And then it also, thinking about the fact that like, you know, you had a system in place that you were able to hold yourself accountable to, helps me also have more fun as well, because while the reality of my character dying exists and that you're not just holding that back, that I don't know, something about that just helps me have a little more fun with it, because it's like, you know, like, I'm not worried about you being biased in any shape, way, or form. And there's something to be said about DM integrity, because, like, you know, if there is no integrity with the DM, then it takes away some of the fun, because it's like, you can get fat on the expectation that your character is immortal. Yeah. And then there comes baggage along with that. Or, like, you know, then there's just that lack of trust, and you're never going to fully throw yourself out there because, like, why does it matter anyways, kind of thing. So I'm glad, I don't know, something, I'm not really putting it to words well.
No, I get it.
Well, I'll echo that too, because I used to play a game called The Eternal City. It was a text-based MUD, if you guys know what those are. If you guys don't know what that is, it's basically, you walk into a room, you're greeted with this wall of text, and there are certain syntaxes and stuff that are introduced, like, look at blank, and when you look at something, you get this wall of text that describes it, and basically it's a simulated novel world. And I put a lot of time into that, like 7 years into this one character, and he was a spearman, this whole concept, and I grew very attached to it. And in that game, if you were PK'd, or if your character went down and you were dead long enough, your character was gone forever. Like, all the stuff you've gotten, everything. Well, we were in this huge battle one time. My character goes unconscious, and when you're unconscious, you cannot control your character, but other people can interact with you. So this random character, you can see what's happening. So this random character drags mine through the woods, picks up a whip, and just, like, tries to initiate the kill command. And the success was a 95. And he keeps rolling until he rolls over 95s and, you know, effectively PKs my character. And I'm like, my 10-year-old self was like, no! You know?
Jeez!
Or maybe I was like 12 or 13. And so, you know, that happens, and then I use the command to revive, and the character was like, cough, cough, out of character, you've been PK'd, what are you doing? And it lit this whole, like, fire in the community of, okay, GMs, are you going to allow this? Like, what's the ruling here? Yeah. Because it's so much effort just off because one random character decides, or one random player decides, oh, this is a character that is actually pretty profound in the game. I have an opportunity. Let me kill them just for fun. And all that just down the drain. And so the DM, the GM, the game masters instead of DMs were put in a position like, what is the ruling here? So, like, I guess I say that springboarding off what Brandon said. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to make a ruling for the greater good that was going to set a precedent? Or like in the fight with the freaking Skull Lord. Like, oh no, this happened, and actually I undertuned this. I need to buff this guy so it's not a lame fight. Like, have you ever had to make any calls like that?
Yeah, actually, Scrawl. In the first encounter that you guys had with him, where he took a passive role and just studied the battle, he was at his full power. I have written a character sheet for Scrawl that is his base character sheet that is a certain level. And then in the most recent session, when I was like, okay, they're going to actively be fighting Scrawl in this tournament, I toned him down because you guys are level 7 right now. So I dropped his level considerably from where it is to be on a level that is more realistically fightable, where you guys could beat him. You know, he's not going to make it easy for you. He's not going to lay down, roll over, and give up. But you could, with, you know, the right percentage of effort, you could beat Scrawl. But that's his tournament character sheet. after the tournament, it goes back to
Or just like most video games where the character's freaking blowing up worlds and
Right.
you fight them 1-2 punches and they're down.
right. And that's the thing. He has in the overarching story, he is a much stronger character for this fighting tournament that we've been going through. The past session that we'll be finishing in the next session. He's holding himself back because that's part of that is his own character motivation of he's more so than proving that he is the strongest, he wants to learn about other people. So he's happy to take a step back and tone down his own abilities so that he can study the abilities of others.
Mm-hmm.
And then and keep himself just at that level where it pushes people to, do just a little bit better and reach to the absolute extent of their own abilities so that he can study that. Because that's kind of his desire. He wants to gain that knowledge and study that, and he's happy to make himself, take a step back a little bit and let other people shine, and so that he can study that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely one instance of I've had to restrain a character. Other than that, that was a conscious decision to restrain Skrull for that. The Skull Lord with the dice roll there at the end was, I personally did not feel that I could make just outright a decision that would, in the second session, kill the entire party. So I was like, okay, I am going to let the dice decide this. This is one where I take the decision out of my own hands and put it to random chance. So, yeah.
Well, that's interesting. That's probably a better way of going about it when you have to make decisions instead of having to make the decision yourself. It's like, okay, God, you decide.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a game of rolling dice anyway, so
Right.
Might as well. That's the mechanic that decides a lot of the stuff that happened at the table. Might as well have it decide what I do too.
It's probably something to kind of write that down, kind of take for those who are watching this now or later, of like if you need to make a pretty dangerous decision and you're not sure what to do. Well, see that that was I'm gonna add this in and then we'll close it out because this is an interesting story. This 4-year ongoing role play, it's about to be 5 years in January. We wanted to do text-based RPG stuff, and we wanted to have it lighter weight than Dungeons and Dragons because there's a lot of mechanics in it that makes you like all these things. And at the time we hadn't played Dungeons and Dragons. I'd played Pathfinder, which is even worse when it comes to all the mechanics that are involved. And here I am, a glutton for pain, picking up Starfinder, which is
God have mercy on you, my friend.
but I'm excited for it because now I've had some Dungeons and Dragons. So I'm not completely ignorant of all the systems, but still I'm overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Either way, so that I want to make a basic version of that for this text-based thing, and there was a period of time within the first year and a half where there was a legitimate discussion on whether we needed the dice or not. In the role play, and at that moment I learned a lesson that I would have never expected to learn about the importance of dice in a role play, and that was it's the scapegoat. Because I recognize it's without the dice, if we were to cooperate for us to make the story to go forward, and I want to do something you didn't agree with, then if there was no dice, we would be stuck in a long argument to make one decision.
Yeah.
And it would no longer be fun because you don't want it to happen, but I do want it to happen, and we're gonna find a compromise for something to happen.
That's essentially super fight.
Yeah, it is in a way. It is a super fight when you think about it. Yes, and I don't want to have that constantly. It's great for a party, not great for a regularly occurring story.
Yeah.
And on top of that, not only does it stop fights from happening or long arguments, it's the scapegoat. That if I don't like something that's happening, instead of me getting angry at you for motivating me to do something I don't want to do, now I can be angry instead at the dice, and the dice saves lives.
Yes.
It saves real lives.
Or takes them.
but at the very least, now I'm angry at the dice, and I'm not angry at you.
Yeah.
And I think that's or at least less likely to be, but still, it makes a big difference. And like, I never expected to learn that, but when you're trying to homebrew your game and figure out the morality of dice, you realize that actually is like, this is a godsend, thank you. So, I guess you could apply that also to DMing. If there's a decision like, I could kill them, I might not kill them, I don't want to make the decision, here you go. The dice is your scapegoat. Put some values to that dice, roll that sucker, and let it decide, and now you can blame the dice.
Well, I guess before we wrap up, Scott, we've done a lot of talking.
Yes.
Today's topic was, what's it like to be a D&D dungeon master? Are there any things that have just been sitting in the back of your mind that you think are worthy to mention? Or if somebody's a burgeoning dungeon master or wants to start their own role play or whatever, are there any tips or tricks that you would want to mention to kind of help them ease into that process?
So for anybody who wants to start DMing their own game, you don't have to be like every other DM out there. There are some huge name DMs. Matthew Mercer comes to mind. Abria Iyengar. Look up live play D&D games on YouTube. There's a whole list of them. You don't have to be them because you're not them. You are you, and the game that you want to play is decided between you and your players. So, like, I love Critical Role. The campaign 3 just started. I stayed up and watched the whole first episode, and I've watched all of campaign 1, all of campaign 2. I adore Critical Role. My game, our game, at our table, nothing like it. It is in an entirely different world, entirely different setting, entirely different problems. But while I do look up to Matthew Mercer as a DM, I'm not him. I'm not going to be able to do the same things that he does. So I am working with who I am and making a game out of that, and working with who my players are. Because my players aren't the cast of Critical Role either. I'm not the Dungeon Master of Critical Role. My party is not the cast of Critical Role. We are our own group in our own game at our own table. So don't try to be someone who you're not. Which is kind of weird to say for a Dungeon Master, considering that you have to literally play every other character in the game.
Fair.
So to say, in yourself, don't be who you're not. Out on the table, be whoever you want to be.
It's funny because, I'm glad that you've been hosting this thing, because I wanted to, and had started to move towards hosting my own Dungeons and Dragons things and inviting you all to it and having that. But I actually look up to you as a DM even before we began this whole thing, because I was remembering all that you did with Halbjörn, and I remembered some other things, the one shot that we did specifically.
Yeah, I ran a few one shots. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I remember the Christmas one that
was
we were
very entertaining.
It was, and I was like, I can't do that. It's hard enough maintaining the voices I have for my own character, let alone.
Okay, so second point of advice for new DMs out there: you don't have to do voices. I have 10 years of theater experience where doing voices was something I really loved to do. You don't have to. There's Jacob from XP to Level 3 on YouTube. He doesn't do voices in his campaign, and he's a great DM. From what I've seen, from what I've watched him, he's very entertaining, very funny, but he doesn't do voices. You don't have to. It's just, I even default to my regular voice for characters from time to time.
That helps me.
Yeah.
Thank you. This is helpful. This is why we do Thought Raid. It's all about rating my own thoughts, okay? And you just no. It's a shared process. Anyways,
well, guys, I guess we should bring this to a close. If you want to see us live stream some of our campaigns, like, subscribe, and give us a comment. Let us know.
Tell
what
us.
you'd like to see.
You guys get to see me make a fool of myself with all funny voices.
We'll have the whole cast. It will be a blast. I promise you. It is worth it. What we'll do is we might replace what we've been doing on Saturdays, move it to Sundays, and then we'll host it. Yes. Yeah. We could do that. Oh, that'd be so fantastic. Let us know in the comments if you're interested in that. That'd be great. So, with that said, I want to thank you guys for watching. We broadcast every week on Mondays, Fridays, and Saturdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we'll be live again tomorrow. We'll be playing some games. What are we playing,
Overwatch.
Tim? Overwatch!
I don't know.
I can see far away from where I've been. He says I see a potential. I see a potential in my eyes. I see a potential. I never lost sight of the reason why you're alive. You're alive. You're alive.